witnessing in Tanzania right now is not just an election. It is a systematic dismantling of democracy, a brazen theft of the people's voice, and yet another reminder that the struggle for true liberation in Africa is far from over. As Tanzanians cast their ballots on Wednesday, October 29th, 2025, the main opposition leaders had already been barred from running, setting the stage for what many are now calling a complete mockery of the democratic process. Let me be clear from the outset. President SAMIA SILUHU Hassan's two biggest challengers were excluded from the race, and the sheer audacity of what followed has shocked even the most cynical observers of African politics. Early results announced through state television showed President Hassan garnering 96.99% of votes in 8 out of 272 constituencies. 96.99%! My brothers and sisters, even in the most popular of leaderships, even in the most united of nations, such numbers don't exist in genuine democratic contests. They exist only in the realm of orchestrated theatre, in the world of predetermined outcomes, where the people's will has been reduced to a mere formality. The story of how we got here is as troubling as it is predictable. Tundu Lissu, the main opposition leader, was arrested at a rally where he called for electoral reforms and charged with treason. Treason for demanding free and fair elections, for asking that the people's voice be heard. This is the language of despots, the vocabulary of those who have forgotten that power belongs to the people, not to individuals or parties that have overstayed their welcome. The Independent National Electoral Commission disqualified Tanzania's main opposition party, Chadema, in April for refusing to sign an electoral code of conduct. And then,
if you're tired of blowing prop firm challenges, here's a question. What if somebody else ran it for you using a tested, structured, and rule-based system?
As if that wasn't enough, Luhaga Mpina, the candidate for the second largest opposition party, ACT Wazalendo, was barred after an objection from the Attorney General. What we're seeing here, my people, is a government so afraid of competition, so terrified of the people's choice, that it had to clear the field entirely before allowing the game to be played. President Hassan faced 16 other candidates, yes, but they were from smaller parties who barely campaigned. This was never a contest. This was a coronation dressed up as an election, and the Tanzanian people, especially the youth, have seen through the charade. Internet connectivity was disrupted across Tanzania as voting began, with net blocks confirming a nationwide outage. This is the modern dictator's playbook, isn't it? When you can't win the argument, you silence the conversation. When you can't control the narrative, you cut off the means of communication. The blackout started just as polling began at 7 a.m. and affected journalists and election observers, making it difficult to verify information on the ground. But here's what authoritarians always forget. The people find a way. Despite the internet blackout, protesters continue to organise on the Zello app, discussing possible marches on government buildings. Generation Z in Tanzania, like their counterparts who shook Kenya earlier this year, understand that social media is not just for entertainment. It's a tool for organisation, for mobilisation, for revolution. Turnout during Wednesday's election was low, and chaos broke out in the afternoon as protesters burned a bus and a gas station, attacked police stations, and vandalised polling centres. Now, I'm not here to glorify violence, but I am here to contextualise it. When peaceful means of expressing dissent are systematically removed, when your candidates are jailed, when your internet is shut down, when your voice is stolen, what options do you leave people? Hundreds of protesters took to the streets singing, "We want our country back." A group burned down a police station along Nelson Mandela Road, the main road from the city's port. The symbolism is not lost on us. Nelson Mandela Road, named after a man who fought against oppression, who spent decades in prison for believing in freedom. On that very road, Tanzanians are now fighting their own battle for democracy. The government imposed a curfew Wednesday evening in DAR-ES-LAM, where most protests had occurred, but protests continued late into the night. Inspector General of Police Camillus Wambura announced that starting October 29th at 6 p.m, everyone must remain indoors, with no one allowed on the roads or streets after that time. But the people, God bless them, the people are not backing down. Thursday saw the second day of demonstrations. In DAR-ES-LAM, protesters who defied the curfew in the Mbagala, Gongo-La Mboto and Kaluvya neighbourhoods were met with tear gas and the sounds of gunfire. The government deployed the military. Roadblocks manned by the Tanzanian army were erected across the country, with those approaching them turned away if they could not prove they were essential workers. This is martial law in everything but name. 2 people died in Wednesday's protests, a civilian and a police officer, according to Amnesty International. 2 families will never be whole again. 2 lives lost in the pursuit of something that should be every citizen's birthright, the freedom to choose their leaders. Tigere Chagutar, Amnesty International's regional director for East and Southern Africa, called the deaths deeply disturbing and urged police to exercise restraint. But restraint seems to be in short supply. In June, a panel of 9 UN experts called the government's actions unacceptable and said they had tallied more than 200 disappearances since 2019. 200 disappearances. This is the dark underbelly of Hassan's presidency that many chose to ignore when she first took office. The Tanganyika Law Society confirmed 83 abductions since Hassan came to power, with another 20 reported in recent weeks. These aren't just statistics. These are fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, people who dared to speak, who dared to organise, who dared to dream of a better Tanzania. Lawmakers from the European Parliament said in a statement Thursday that the elections in Tanzania were neither free nor fair and urged democratic partners to stand firm in the defence of democracy and human rights. Strong words from Brussels. But what do strong words mean when they're not backed by strong actions? The African Union has been conspicuously quiet, as it so often is when one of its member states slides into authoritarianism. This is the hypocrisy we must call out. The same international community that lectures Africa about democracy seems remarkably comfortable with dictators as long as they maintain stability and keep their borders open for business. Where are the sanctions? Where is the real pressure? Or do Tanzanian lives matter less than geopolitical convenience? And here's where the story gets even more interesting, my brothers and sisters. Several Kenyans were stopped by police officers attempting to cross the Namanga border to enter Tanzania to join the protests. Yes, you heard that right. Kenyans, fresh from their own uprising against their government earlier this year, were trying to cross into Tanzania to stand in solidarity with their neighbours. Hundreds of Tanzanian protesters crossed into Kenya and lit bonfires, supported by some Kenyan traders at the border.
Most high-income professionals are making good money, but they're still on the hamster wheel, trading time.
Chanting anti-government slogans, the protesters destroyed President Hassan's election billboards, terming the Wednesday elections a sham. This is Pan-Africanism in action. This is what it means when we say an injury to one is an injury to all. The internet shutdown on the Tanzanian side affected cargo clearance at the Namanga one-stop border post, with traders staring at millions in losses. The economic ripple effects of this crisis are spreading beyond Tanzania's borders. When one country in East Africa suffers, we all feel it. Our economies are intertwined, our peoples are connected, our destinies are linked. The Kenyan government, caught between solidarity with its neighbour's government and pressure from its own activists, issued warnings. But the people's movement doesn't respect diplomatic niceties. It responds to the call of justice, wherever that call may come from. When SAMIA SILUHU Hassan took office in 2021 after John Magufuli's death, many Tanzanians dared to hope. Here was a woman leader, someone who initially signalled a departure from Magufuli's authoritarian style. She had been accused of tightening restrictions on free expression and political competition, despite initially pledging to promote openness after Magufuli's rule. But power, as we've seen across our continent time and again, has a way of changing people. Or perhaps it simply reveals who they always were. The woman who promised reform has become the architect of repression. The leader who spoke of opening up political space has systematically closed it, ensuring no real challenger could threaten her grip on power. Reports suggest she campaigned with convoys of luxury vehicles, a jarring display of wealth in a country where millions struggle daily. While the youth demand jobs, education, and opportunities, their president parades in opulence, secured by the very military that should be defending the nation, not occupying it. This is the question we must ask. Why is President Hussein so terrified of a fair fight? Why did she need to jail Tundu Lissu? Why did she need to disqualify entire opposition parties? If the ruling CCM party, which has held power since independence in 1961, is so beloved, if Hussein herself is so popular, why not prove it at the ballot box? The answer, my friends, is obvious. She knows what we know, that given a real choice, the people would choose differently. More than 37 million registered voters were eligible to cast ballots, but turnout was notably low, particularly among young voters. This is not apathy. This is protest. When you're offered a menu with only one option, choosing not to eat is a political statement. The 96.99% preliminary result isn't just implausible, it's insulting. It's the government telling its people, we don't even care if you believe this, we have the power, and we will do what we want. Such numbers are reminiscent of the worst excesses of African strongmen, the kind of elections that brought shame to our continent in decades past. What's happening in Tanzania mirrors what we saw in Kenya, what we've seen in Uganda, what we're seeing across Africa. The youth, Generation Z as they're called, are tired. Despite heavy security in DAR-ES-LAM, hundreds of protesters took to the streets, with police firing tear gas but being forced to retreat as protesters pelted them with stones. They're tired of corrupt elites who've been in power since before they were born. They're tired of being told to wait their turn while opportunities disappear and futures dim. They're tired of elections that are decided before a single vote is cast. They're tired of being treated like subjects rather than citizens. And so they march. Despite the guns, despite the tear gas, despite the curfews, despite the internet blackouts, they march. Hundreds of protesters breached security barriers to access a road leading to the country's main airport, even though they were unable to enter. The symbolism matters. The airport, gateway to the world, symbol of mobility and freedom, and the people trying to reach it, trying to be seen, trying to be heard. Those of us who study African politics remember Madagascar. We remember how protests escalated, how a president who thought himself secure suddenly found the ground shifting beneath his feet. What's happening in Tanzania has echoes of that moment. When a government loses legitimacy, when the people's patience runs out, when the youth take to the streets en masse, history shows us that the facade of control can crumble rapidly. Hussein should be panicking if she's wise. Not because of the protests themselves, but because of what they represent. A fundamental rejection of the political order she represents. The CCM has ruled Tanzania since 1961, 64 years of single-party dominance. That's longer than most Tanzanians have been alive. The party has confused longevity with inevitability, forgotten that every dynasty eventually falls. If these protests continue, if they grow, if they spread beyond Dar-es-Salaam to every corner of the nation, Hussein will face a choice. She can double down on repression, turning Tanzania into a police state, or she can listen to her people. History suggests strongmen rarely choose the latter until it's too late. Ferry services from the Tanzanian mainland to the semi-autonomous archipelago of Zanzibar were suspended, cutting off the islands from the mainland. The government is essentially locking down the country, trying to contain a movement that has already spread too far to be contained. The message from Tanzania's youth is clear. They will not accept this stolen election. They will not go quietly into the night. They will not let their country be handed over to another 5 years of CCM rule without a fight. And crucially, they're not asking for permission. They're not waiting for opposition leaders to guide them. This is a leaderless movement, organised online, mobilised through apps, united by a common purpose. This terrifies governments because there's no one to negotiate with, no one to arrest who will make the movement stop. It's organic, it's widespread, and it's determined. As Pan-Africanists, we must see Tanzania's struggle as our own. When democracy dies in Dar-es-LAM, it weakens in Nairobi, in Kampala, in Harare, in every capital across our continent. When young people are shot for demanding their rights in Tanzania, it sets a precedent that threatens young people everywhere. It's the latest election this month in Africa to fuel deep-seated anger among citizens after long-time leaders in the Ivory Coast and Cameroon also sought to cling onto power. This is the pattern we must break. The cycle of aging leaders refusing to step aside, of ruling parties that have forgotten how to lose gracefully, of elections that are exercises in ratification rather than choice. The Kenyan youth who tried to cross into Tanzania understood this. They understood that this fight transcends borders, that an attack on democracy in one country is an attack on democracy in all countries. This is the spirit we need, not narrow nationalism, but continental solidarity. No one knows where this movement is heading. The protesters themselves might not know, but that's not a weakness, it's a strength. They've shown HUSSAIN and the CCM a message louder than any manifesto. We are here, we are many, and we will not be ignored. The government asked public servants to work from home on Thursday to limit the movement of non-essential staff. The government ordered civil servants to remain home after protests erupted across the country. When a government tells its own workers to stay home because it can't guarantee their safety on the streets, that government has lost control of the narrative. The coming days will be crucial. Will the military remain loyal to HUSSAIN, or will they remember that their oath is to Tanzania and its people, not to one woman or one party? Will the international community move beyond statements to actions? Will the opposition, even from prison and exile, find ways to channel this popular anger into organised political pressure? What's certain is this: Tanzania will never be the same. The social contract has been broken, the pretense of democracy has been shattered, and the youth have tasted their power. They've seen that when they stand together, governments tremble. That's a genie that cannot be put back in the bottle. To our brothers and sisters in Tanzania, hold the line. Your courage inspires us all. Your refusal to accept this theft of democracy gives hope to millions across Africa who live under similar oppression. You are not alone. The eyes of the continent are on you. To African leaders, watch what's happening in Tanzania and learn. The old playbook, jail the opposition, control the media, manipulate elections, it's failing. This generation won't accept it. You can adapt, open up political space, genuinely embrace democracy, or you can fall. The choice is yours. To the international community, your silence is complicity. Tanzania matters. Tanzanian lives matter. Democracy in Africa matters. If you claim to care about these things, prove it now, not with statements, but with actions. To fellow Pan-Africanists everywhere, Tanzania's fight is our fight. Amplify their voices, share their stories, support their struggle however you can. Solidarity isn't just a word, it's an action, a commitment, a bond that ties our liberation movements together. What we're witnessing in Tanzania is painful, yes. It's violent, chaotic, uncertain, but it's also necessary. Democracy isn't given, it's fought for. Freedom isn't granted, it's seized. The youth of Tanzania are engaged in that ancient, noble struggle, and they're doing it with the tools of the modern age and the courage of their ancestors. President SAMIA SILUHU HUSSAIN can deploy more troops, arrest more activists, shut down more networks. But she cannot arrest an idea whose time has come. She cannot shut down the yearning for genuine democracy that has awakened in the hearts of millions. She cannot, ultimately, govern a people who have withdrawn their consent. The protests will continue, the resistance will grow, and eventually, whether through peaceful transition or continued upheaval, change will come to Tanzania. The only question is how much blood will be spilled before those in power accept the inevitable. Africa is rising, but not in the way the development economists meant. Our youth are rising, rising up, rising against, rising to claim their inheritance. And no amount of military might, no percentage of stolen votes, no internet blackout can stop them. Tanzania burns tonight, but from these flames, a new nation can be born. A nation where elections are genuine contests, where leaders serve at the pleasure of the people, where young voices are heard rather than silenced, that Tanzania is worth fighting for, that Tanzania is what these brave young people are risking everything to create.